All right, so are you ready to break down this Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight?
Oh, yeah.
Let's get into it.
So we're looking at this Sporting News article. Gives a pretty good summary of what happened in the ring that night. You know what's so interesting about this whole thing? It's like YouTube star versus, a legend.
Yeah, I mean, you've got these two totally different worlds of boxing colliding. It's really something.
So for those who haven't been following along too closely, YouTubers are boxing now. And apparently they're pretty good at it.
Yeah, well, some of them anyway. Jake Paul, he's been taking it seriously, putting in the work.
Yeah, so this wasn't just some publicity stunt. This was a real fight.
Oh, absolutely. And, everyone was wondering, could Jake Paul actually pull it off? Can he really beat Mike Tyson?
And the answer is
Well,
yes. Jake Paul won by unanimous decision.
it was a shocker for a lot of people, but when you look at the stats, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, let's dive into the numbers a little bit because I
Yeah.
think that tells a big part of the story. Okay, so Paul landed 78 punches out of 278 thrown. That's like a 28% accuracy rate.
Okay.
Tyson, on the other hand, only landed 18 punches out of 97.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just 18%.
So Paul was landing way more punches overall, but he didn't knock Tyson out.
Right, and that's where you start to see the whole age and experience thing come into play.
Okay, so you're saying Tyson's age was a factor.
Oh, I think it definitely played a role. I mean, he's 58 years old.
Hmm.
His last pro fight was back in 2005.
Wow, so almost 20 years ago.
Yeah. And boxing, it's a young man's game. You need that speed, that agility. And Tyson just didn't have the same pop he used to.
So is it just ring rust, or is there something more to it?
Well, I think it's a combination of things. Tyson's power was legendary, but even the best fighters slow down with age.
Yeah, Father Time catches up with everyone eventually.
That's right.
Right.
But like I said, we can't take anything away from Jake Paul. He
Right.
came in with a game plan and executed it perfectly.
So what was his strategy?
He knew he couldn't stand there and slug it out with Tyson, so he focused on speed, agility, volume punching. Kept moving, worked angles, chipping away with jabs and combinations.
It's almost like he outboxed Mike Tyson.
In a way, yeah. He fought smart, not necessarily harder.
That's interesting. So even though Paul landed more punches, he couldn't get that knockout. And after the fight, he said he didn't want to hurt someone that didn't need to be hurt. What do you make of that statement?
That's a tough one. Was it respect for a legend, a calculated move to avoid a risky knockout attempt? Or was it a bit of showmanship, playing to the crowd? It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely adds another layer to the whole thing. It's like, is this just boxing or is it something more?
Right. It's that mix of sport, entertainment, personal narratives. It's what keeps us watching.
Well, okay, so we've talked about the main event, but this fight card was packed with other great matches, like the Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano rematch. This is a rematch from their historic fight at Madison Square Garden. It was the first women's boxing match to headline at that legendary venue.
Yeah, that first fight was an absolute war. Taylor barely won by split decision.
And this time around,
Taylor switched up her strategy. She used her footwork, her ring generalship to control the distance and frustrate Serrano.
it sounds like it was a really tactical fight.
Oh, it was. And the scorecards show just how close it was. Taylor won, again by unanimous decision. But the judges' scores were 95 to 94, 95 to 94, and 95 to 94.
Wow, so close.
It was a nail biter. But Taylor's adjustments ultimately made the difference. This fight wasn't just about two incredible athletes. It was about the evolution of women's boxing. It proved that it can be just as skillful, strategic, and captivating as the men's side of the sport.
Absolutely. And speaking of captivating, we can't forget about the Mario Barrios versus Abel Ramos fight, which ended in a split draw.
Oh, yeah, split draws. Those always leave you wanting more, don't they? They spark debate, fuel the desire for a rematch.
So what happened in this fight?
Well, both Barrios and Ramos are known for their aggressive styles. They're willing to trade punches. It was back and forth, the momentum swinging like a pendulum throughout the whole fight.
The article doesn't really go into too much detail about it, but it sounds like both fighters had their moments.
Yeah, both of them landed. Some big shots, showed a lot of heart. No wonder the judges had such a hard time scoring it.
So one judge scored it 114 to 112 for Barrios. Another had it 116 to 110 for Ramos. And the third judge called it even at 113 to 113.
Talk about a mixed bag, right?
It just shows you how unpredictable boxing can be. Sometimes there are no clear winners or losers, just two warriors leaving it all in the ring.
That's the beauty of it, right? You
Yeah.
just never know what's going to happen when those gloves touch.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that whole like evolution of boxing thing because when I think about Jake Paul beating Mike Tyson, it really does feel like a changing of the guard.
Yeah, it's like, what does that say about boxing today? I mean, you've got this legend, Mike Tyson, right, representing this golden age of boxing. And then you have Jake Paul, this YouTube personality who's now a legitimate boxer. It's like two worlds colliding.
It's making everyone rethink what it means to be a boxer these days.
Right, and like how we even view athletic achievement in general.
It's a really interesting conversation to be having.
Yeah.
So, do you think Paul's win is good for boxing or bad for boxing?
Well, it's a double-edged sword, right? On the one hand, you could say he's bringing new eyes to the sport,
Yeah.
attracting a younger audience who might not have been interested before.
Yeah. I mean, love him or hate him, he's definitely got people talking about boxing.
Exactly. And that kind of buzz can only be a good thing for the sport. But on the other hand, some people say that Paul's celebrity overshadows his actual boxing skills.
Like they think his fights are more spectacle than sport.
Yeah, and they worry that this whole trend of celebrity boxing is going to dilute the sport, take away from the accomplishments of real dedicated fighters.
I can see both sides of the argument. It's definitely a complex issue.
I think it reflects this larger cultural shift we're seeing where the lines between athlete, celebrity, and influencer are becoming more and more blurred.
It's a fascinating discussion for sure. But at the end of the day, Jake Paul is a skilled boxer. He's earned his victories in the ring.
Oh, absolutely. He's put in the work and he's proven himself as more than just a YouTube star.
All right, so before we wrap up, let's touch on some of the other fights on the undercard. We had Miraj Goya defeating Winderson, Nunes, Shadeja Green winning against Melinda Watpool,
Mm-hmm.
Lucas Body getting a majority decision over Corey Marksman.
Yeah, and Bruce Carrington just dominating Dana Coolwell. It was a stacked card.
It really was. So tell me a little bit about some of these standout performances.
Well, Goyat's win over Nunes was impressive. He really controlled the pace, landed some powerful combos, showcased his technical skills.
Seems like a fighter to watch.
Oh, definitely. He's got a bright future.
Oh.
And then there was Green's victory over Watpool. That was a back-and-forth battle, showed both power and resilience.
And Body's close win over Marksman proved that even on the undercard, you can find those edge-of-your-seat fights.
It was a nail-biter, for sure. And then you had Carrington just putting on a clinic against Coolwell. He was so fast, so accurate.
Yeah, his performance really stood out to me. It's exciting to see all this young talent coming up through the ranks.
Yeah, it's like watching the next chapter of boxing history unfold right in front of us.
So let's shift gears for a second and talk about something a little less serious. The article mentions some technical difficulties with Netflix buffering during the fight.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Can you believe it? It's 2024 and we're still dealing with buffering problems.
I know. It's like, come on, technology, get it together.
But hey, at least it gave people something to laugh about on social media.
Oh, yeah, the memes were hilarious. People were definitely making the most of it.
It's always funny how people find humor in those unexpected situations.
And speaking of unexpected, we can't forget about the accidental full moon incident involving Mike Tyson.
Oh my gosh, yes! That was a moment for the highlight reel.
You know what they say, live TV, anything can happen.
That's right. And in a way, those unscripted moments make these events even more memorable.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. The fights, the fighters, the drama, the technical difficulties, the wardrobe malfunctions.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. We've explored the evolution of boxing, the changing nature of celebrity, and the enduring appeal of this sport.
And I think it's safe to say that boxing is alive and well, constantly evolving and finding new ways to captivate audiences.
Absolutely. Now, as we look to the future of boxing, there are so many questions to ponder. Will Jake Paul continue his rise to the top? Will women's boxing keep gaining momentum? And how will technology continue to shape the way we experience these events?
These are all great questions, and honestly, I don't have the answers, but I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Me too. So we want to hear from you, our listeners.
Yeah.
What were your biggest takeaways from this event? Hit us up on social media and let us know your thoughts.
Did you agree with the judges' decisions? Were you shocked by any of the outcomes?
We want to hear it all.
Even if your biggest takeaway was the full moon incident, we're here for it.
Because at the end of the day, it's those unexpected moments that make these events so memorable. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely a night to remember.
This deep dive has been a knockout.
Mm-hmm.
I think we went beyond just the headlines, really got into the deeper stories and all the technical stuff.
Yeah, and we touched on some of those bigger cultural questions too. It's like this event really made people think about where boxing is headed.
Right, and that's what we love to do here on the deep dive.
Yeah.
Give you something to think about long after the episode's over.
So as you're following the boxing world, keep these things in mind. How is technology changing the game? How are athletes using their platforms to connect with fans? And what does all of this mean for the future of sports?
Big questions, right?
They are, but they're important ones.
So on that note, that's it for our deep